This is me playing Donkey Kong Bananza at an exclusive event that Nintendo invited me to. Thank you, Nintendo. I got to explore and check out Sublayers, get into a boss fight, and I'll be revealing some interesting information not seen anywhere before. So smash that subscribe button just like Donkey Kong is smashing this wall as soon as I was able to start the game in the Ingot Isles mines. In this location, you get your first ever Banadium gem and pretty much get to feel for how Donkey Kong just smashes up everything. This is the learning ground for all the basics of Donkey Kong's movement. This area is really cool because you get to learn how easily collectibles are hidden and get an idea of where they place them in the game. And you'll also be able to brainstorm on how to reach these specific items. You also will be able to collect a ton of gold here, Banadium chips hidden behind contraptions, and you'll even find some hidden Banadium gems. Now, the first sub-layer I got to really explore was the Lagoon layer. This layer actually reminded me of the starting Sky Islands a bit from Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but this is actually underground. In this sub-layer, you'll notice that the odd rock is with Donkey Kong, but that'll change by the end of this sub-layer, so stay tuned for that. I was able to explore this layer a bit, running around, breaking things, fighting a bit of enemies, but I really had to focus on the objective. So after talking to this specific monkey, I found out that this sub-layer was suffering from a water shortage issue with these strange pillars from the evil group Voidco that was placed in different spots that was clogging up all the water. So while I made my way to deal with these pillars, I actually had to deal with a flying enemy type that had explosive rocks on them. Now, something really cool about Donkey Kong is that he can actually catch these objects mid-air and then just chuck them right back at the enemy, which is extremely satisfying. And after making my way to the top towards this Voidco structure, I grabbed an explosive material off one of these enemies and threw it at the Voidco structure, which caused the water to unclog, raising the water level. Now, if you're wondering if Donkey Kong can safely swim without drowning, yeah, he can swim perfectly fine. Thank goodness he doesn't take damage in the water. Now, when Donkey Kong is also climbing across structures, he can battle enemies with no problem. He just punches them and he still hangs on. Something really cool about the Lagoon layer is that you can also drop ropes down to create alternate paths. So if for some reason you accidentally fall down in the water, you can simply just climb back up by going up on this rope. Now, there are also a lot of mini challenges in the Lagoon layer, and one example is this moving explosive floor that has thorns in front of you, so you have to just throw explosives at it and break them to survive it until you arrive at the end. I also did one where I had to fight a bunch of enemies and defeat them in a certain amount of time to complete it. There are also a ton more, and you'll discover them when you play. In the Lagoon layer, I was also able to interact with the Kong Elder, and the Odd Rock was actually having some voice acting while talking to him. While talking to him, I was asked what I seek. I picked the option of bananas and surface, and then he brought up talking about performing a Bananza that needed an ancient record to do it. So I made my way over all the way to a Voidco structure that I had to destroy to raise up the water, but I missed and accidentally fell and couldn't climb up because actually in this area there are slippery surfaces that you can't get up on. Luckily, the game allows you to fast travel back, so I just opened up my mini map and then fast traveled back to the original checkpoint that I got. Then I made my way all the way back to this Voidco structure, grabbed an explosive rock, but here's something that's interesting. When these little enemies latch onto you, they actually make it a lot harder to throw an object. Luckily, I was able to throw it because it was a very big piece of explosive material and it blew it up, and the water unclogged, allowing me to make my way over and grab this ancient record. Now, here's a fun fact. When you're holding this ancient record, you can turf surf on it, and it is completely indestructible. I'm sure there are going to be some crazy ideas using this exact disc, but I just wanted to make sure that you all know that these discs do not break, so it's unlimited spins on it, which is pretty cool. Now, after placing the record down, this happened. Pressing L and R together caused Pauline to come out of the rock. So this is how Odd Rock becomes Pauline. However, she was really shy to sing. Finally, Pauline had the courage to sing after Donkey Kong did a drum beat, which caused Donkey Kong to enter Kong Bananza form. Right after this, I was able to get a little mini tutorial on how to use this form, and pressing Y lets you punch through these tough walls. But when you approach a much stronger wall, all you have to do is just hold Y to charge up and then smash right through it. And you legit feel the power in this Donkey Kong Bananza form, and he makes this like charge up sound that sounds like brrrr. You hear it. Now, when this form wears off, you just have to collect gold in order to charge it right back up as indicated by the bottom left icon. And then you can simply just activate it again by pressing L and R. Also, the music plays whenever you do enter this Kong Bananza form, so you get a little jam while you're in this form. After that, we interacted with the Kong Elder, and I finally got a notification that Pauline is now your friend, which is great to know because I wouldn't want her to be my enemy. We then got a really quick cutscene of a evil Void co-member spying on us, and that was it for this section. The next sublayer that I went to was the Canyon layer, which has a terrain strength of level 2, and for context, the Lagoon layer also was terrain strength 2. Now, right from the start of going here, I already had my Kong Bananza form, so I was able to punch my way through a bunch of these walls until I arrived at a little minecart, and well, it's a normal minecart, but it looks little because Donkey Kong is absolutely huge. Now, on my way to the village, I came across these specific enemies, which were just these giant, tall structures of rock, and inside of them was a little gold guy that slammed a hammer down, which is the theme of these kind of enemies within the Canyon layer. Now, I don't have assist mode on, which is the mode that allows you to see where you need to go next, and it also reduces the damage you take. So because I didn't have that on, one whack from these guys took out a heart and a half of my health, which eventually caused me to die and respawn. And if you want to know what actually is the consequences of dying in Donkey Kong, or just losing all your hearts, you don't actually die, you just lose your hearts and respawn. You actually lose gold, which is a very important item in the game. So there are consequences to it. It's not like you lose your progress or you lose your collectibles, but you do lose gold, which is something you need to purchase items, which we'll get to. Now, once I arrived at the village, you'll see that there's a little bit of gold on this checkpoint. You break it off and then you get the checkpoint notification, which shows up on the screen, and this also acts as a fast travel point. And the name of this village, after doing that, was Long Neck Plateau Village. While I was in the Canyon layer, I also got to try out the multiplayer mode. So to assist me on this, I had my wife Henna join me to try this out. I know, it's hard to believe I'm married and I'm playing video games. As you can tell, we were themed up for this moment, as I was Donkey Kong and she was wearing a yellow outfit, so she was the banana. Anyway, here's exactly how multiplayer works. Once you have the second player connected to you, they will be able to control Pauline. In this case, I was controlling Pauline at the start. I have on the screen right now that you can take a quick screenshot of the controls for Pauline. One of the main ones I want you to pay attention to is that ZR is the shout button, but holding ZR copies a material. To see that in action, you can actually see the target cursor on the screen, and as it hovers over different materials or terrain, a name will pop up above it. When you hold ZR, you'll see the meter in the circle fill up. Copying gold is absolutely broken, as it literally just starts to explode things. However, you can see that there are actually little circles on the bottom that disappear as you use the gold attacks, indicating how many you have left with that specific material. Then it'll go back to whatever basic material it originally was using. Now, I noticed if you break a collectible object like a fossil from a distance, with the yelling, you can receive that item. I also tried to use Pauline's attack on a Banadium gem, but it didn't work. So it looks like you actually have to manually punch those as Donkey Kong in order to get those. Now, something cool I discovered was that you can also copy the strange lifelike object NPCs that you can interact with in this layer and use their materials. I copied this NPC named Fractonium's material, and you can shoot it right back at it, and something weird is that it actually stuck to it, which is crazy. I didn't know it was a material that did that. I also think it's really funny that the exact word that Pauline says is the word that attack shows up. It's funny. I don't know. Maybe you don't think it's funny. Basically, if you want to destroy an environment really fast, multiplayer is probably the best route to take, as Donkey Kong is punching while Pauline is yelling. You'll probably level off an entire area and find all the collectibles you need. Now, a really cool NPC I came across are shaped like houses. This one's specific name was Architectone. When you talk to them, they build something known as a getaway. Now, the first one I built cost 100 gold, and because it's the first one, I got something known as a comfy level. Pretty cool. What this exactly means is if you nap, you'll recover all your hearts and you'll get an extra bonus yellow heart. That's how you know the difference between your hearts and the bonus heart. Now, at this getaway, you can also change your outfits, listen to different music tracks. Once you find another getaway, you can also pay gold for it and then hit comfort level 2. So when you sleep in a getaway after unlocking 2, you get a +2 bonus in hearts. These getaways are also a very good time to interact with Pauline as well, so if you select the other option that's not ZZZ, you'll get some special voice acting dialogue by listening to Pauline. It's a way of you bonding with her.
hanging onto your back all the time must be a better workout than I realized. Sorry, little straw. Good night.
I also noticed at getaways closer to villages, after you set them up, you'll get a butler looking NPC with a mustache, and when you interact with them, they basically simulate all the stores in the village, like a stuff shop, the style shop, the chip exchange, which we will get into. Now, one thing cool about Donkey Kong Bananza is that you can teleport to any unlocked checkpoint that you have. And once you select it, after you open your map and look for the checkpoint that you unlocked and broke by punching it, a giant eel will just come and get you and teleport you. I don't know how they thought of this, but it makes sense, and it plays a really fun pun on the word teleport. This is much better than Donkey Kong actually just, teleporting on his own or fast traveling to that location. They somehow made it make sense with the eels. Once I teleported back to the village, I wanted to check out some of the shops. The theme of this area was a bit western with the whole canyon-like area. And talking to this NPC shop, you could see that there were options for different types of Donkey Kong pants, and feel free to take a look at the status effects, a tie, as well as outfits for Pauline and the dyes for Donkey Kong to change his color. If you notice, the currency in order to get these are fossils, and these specific fossils are tied to each stage as they tend to change, and you'll notice that by looking at the right side of the menu when you are roaming around. I picked up some dark blue britches, the Giddy App Canyon getup for Pauline that extends your Kong Bananza time by 40%, which I got major Toy Story vibes from this outfit specifically, and I picked up a sunset red fur. I equipped all the stuff on, and then you get a confirmation menu that says looking good to proceed, and hold up if you want to go back and change what you put on. Now, there was also an NPC here called Fractonium, who was shaped like a Banadium chip, where you could exchange Banadium chips for Banadium gems. Now, here's something interesting. The first exchange was 10 chips for 1 gem that costed 100 gold. As a reminder, 5 Banadium gems is what gives you a skill point in this game that you can use to upgrade, and there are a lot of different skills and some upgrades that require more than 1 skill point. Now, when I tried trading again, this time it cost me 20 Banadium chips for 120 gold. Then the next one cost 30 Banadium chips for 140 gold. So it looks like Banadium chip exchange scales as you trade in more. Now, I don't know if it's per specific area or if this is an overall theme shared by all the sublayers when you reach the shops. I also encountered another NPC named Constructone here in the canyon layer that I had to pay 1,000 gold to, which by the way is a lot, to remove a bunch of rubble that led to a really interesting challenge. Now, to give you context, you can see on the floor there are 3 inserts of Banadium gems for these specific challenges, which is how many Banadium gems are actually inside of here. And when you do happen to complete the challenge and come outside, you'll see the amount of Banadium gems highlighted on the floor, so if you ever pass by it again in the world, you'll know you have to go back to it to get the other one. Also, to even enter this specific challenge, a normal Donkey Kong punch wasn't gonna work. So I had to enter my Kong Bananza form to get inside of this one based on the pattern or shape. So it looks like there's gonna be some areas in this game that are locked behind specific Bananza forms. Now, if you're ever in a challenge area, talk to the NPCs, because if you have no idea what to do, they actually tell you exactly what to do. So I went to smashing this entire area, which if you can tell, this is an Easter egg location. And once I finally destroyed this entire building, I dropped all the way to the bottom, and then I just found a Banadium gem hidden at the bottom of the floor, and on the way out I got one for completing it. A really cool thing about some of these challenges is that they don't just randomly end when the timer is up or if you just complete it. You actually sometimes get time to explore the area and look if there are any secrets in that area. I also got the opportunity to do a boss fight against Grumpy Kong. Now, Grumpy Kong was a really interesting fight. When I broke this canyon area and dropped all the way to the bottom, he was just chilling there, and he literally turned this pile of rocks into a giant enemy that had a massive hammer, which was kind of similar to the enemies in the area, which makes me think our boss is similar to the types of enemies you actually battle within a sublayer. So this boss fight was composed of 2 types of terrain. Really basic one that Donkey Kong could easily just smash, and a much tougher material which required me to go into Kong Bananza form to break. Once it destroyed all the rocks, I then could easily get to Grumpy Kong, and I just started to beat the heck out of his face. Just punch him. but I did get hit a couple of times because I wasn't even paying attention to the fact that there are cues for when he's going to do a swing attack on you, which means they put some thought and effort into these boss fights, which I really do appreciate it. Also, he almost annihilated me completely because I only had half of a heart left. And after dodging one of his attacks, he got completely dizzy. I was able to beat him up and win the fight. Also, fun fact, I did sleep at the Getaway before this fight, so I did have my extra hearts, and if I didn't do that, I would have lost this fight, and I would have been pretty embarrassed if everyone saw me lose that. So it's good to know that there are difficulty to these fights, and this is only one boss fight. There's probably so many more in the game. The next sublayer that I got to check out was the Forest Sublayer, which is known as SL600, and has a terrain strength of 3, which is 1 strength higher than the previous 2 sublayers we've talked about. As you can tell on the right side of the screen, all of the fossils are completely different here. They even got like a weird snake looking fossil. The environment here fully simulated what a forest would look like. Very green, and all the water here was just poison. There are also a bunch of red thorns that can do some pretty bad damage to Donkey Kong, so you need to make sure to pick up terrain and throw something at it and not run into it because you'll get hurt. Also, the enemies here were really interesting. They had spiky red thorn enemies that you can break. They had these weird enemies that were like snake-like that came at you, and other enemies that just rushed at you. So it's really interesting to see that the enemy diversity is very different depending on the sublayer you are on. Now, like I mentioned, this layer is filled with poisoned water, and I was told to make my way to the village to check it out. As I was going there, I came across these interesting seeds, and when you hit them, they sprout out a giant green vine. So I picked it up and aimed it, and I threw it across at a wooden stump, and the whole vine came right to me, and I was able to cross it with no problems. Once I crossed it, I did notice a void coat structure there, so whenever you see that, make sure to sing to unbind whatever's wrapping it up, and then smash it with Donkey Kong to clear up that really annoying purple stuff that's attached to some of these void coat structures. And you never know, it might lead to secret areas in the game. Now, if you're wondering what happens if you fall into the poisoned water, well, it chips at your health very slowly, like you're actually getting poisoned and dying in the water. You don't want to be in there. I fell down in it way too much. Not good. After getting through a bunch of enemies, I threw another seed, made a bridge, and finally made it to the village, which was known as the Bellhop Burb. Now, I checked out the stuff shop here, and here's what they have. They had a bunch of balloons that came in 1 or 10 times, and basically all they do is pick you up if you fall off of the edge in a map. It's pretty helpful, actually, just to have them on you. They also had apple juice, which activates your health if it reaches 0 as your final lifesaver. So I probably could have used that because I did KO a lot in this game. Melon juice activates a Bananzna without a full Bananargy meter, which is pretty nice, especially in boss fights or in those situations when you really need it. They also had Banadium gem maps, fossil maps, which are actually useful if you're struggling fighting certain items and fossils, which are going to be important for purchasing gear, and Banadiums, which are important for your skill points. I also think this is a really good quality of life add-on, because if you're really having a problem finding it on the map, this is a great way to make it a little bit easier for yourself. That way you can purchase what you need to. I also checked out the gear shop here, and they had a bunch of bridges that reduced poison water damage, which makes a lot of sense. I usually find that the equipment is attached to what you have to deal with in the environment. They also had a battle bow tie that restores Bananargy as you defeat enemies, and normally you would have to get gold in order to do that, but defeating enemies works when you have this equipment, so it's really cool to see the diversity in equipment. Now, Pauline, they had forest uniforms that extended the time of the Ostrich Bananza, which is already unlocked, and I'll show you guys that in a few, and they also had 2 dyes for Donkey Kong. I picked the Dusty Grape Fur one over the yellow looking one. There it was, Donkey Kong with Dusty Grape Fur. Now, I climbed to the highest point in this area that I could in the forest layer to finally try out the Ostrich Bananza. And I failed the first time and fell into the poisoned water. Now, the Ostrich Bananza form is really interesting because it essentially is something that is meant for gliding, and you can upgrade that via your skill points. It also can drop an egg bomb on enemies, but that also requires you to have a skill point. One of the cool things about this is that you initially start off this stage by having to throw seeds at areas in order to cross them by walking, but the Ostrich Bananza form can just just bypass that by just flying across. Also, something that is really nice to know about these Bananza forms is that you can simply just switch with your D-pad into another Bananza form, which is pretty nice. Now, going back to talking about the sublayer, this sublayer is extremely dangerous, and you need to be really careful when you're in the 4 sublayer, because even breaking the ground, you just fall right into the poison water, and I found myself falling into it constantly, which shows that there is quite a lot of diversity when it comes to how they world built all these sublayers in the game, that they're just completely different, and it's really nice that it feels unique compared to the other layers. And I love the fact that enemies here are extremely unique for each layer. There were also a lot of cool challenges in this layer, from defeating enemies in a certain amount of time to platforming barrel shooting challenges, but one really interesting type of challenge I came across were these gold challenges,
Let's go!
which brought me to a timer where I had to collect as much gold as possible. Now, once the timer is over in these kind of challenges, you can't revisit the challenge and re-enter it. So keep that in mind before you enter a gold challenge, unlike the other challenges where you could keep re-entering it to try again. So bring your A game and make sure you're efficiently grabbing as much gold as possible. Now, what you saw was just scratching the surface of what Donkey Kong Bananza actually is. Who knows what crazy stuff actually exists in this game? I too have many questions about, is King K. Rool in the game? How many sublayers actually exist? And how did Pauline even get here? But all these questions will be answered on July 17th at the launch of this game, so make sure you pre-order and grab a copy of Donkey Kong Bananza when it releases, and check out this video right over here, and subscribe if you like videos like this. Thanks again, Nintendo, for inviting me. You should click on this video.